Several weeks back, Syracuse began its 6-game road trip with back-to-back losses. It wasn't trending in a good direction, but tonight, to cap off that 6-game journey around the country, the Orange had a chance to make it 4 in a row, and well, 8th-ranked Syracuse did just that, taking down 14th-ranked Denver in a 1-goal thriller that came down to the wire. And we have Orange Press Pass coming your way for the next 30 minutes to break it all down. And with that, we welcome you into Orange Press Pass. Alongside Jish, Sokolsky and Nick Zuppe, I'm Sam Reis. Guys, let's cut straight to the chase. That was a thrilling game that came down to the wire when all was said and done. Your takeaways after what was one that got your heart racing towards the
Yeah, Sam, I'm still catching my breath after this one, but what it really goes to show, it's a lesson we've learned all season long. You really can't judge this team by its start or really by its finish either. This is a middle quarters team. That's when Syracuse really started to break away and show that they were a superior team to Denver. You got to tip your cap to the Pioneers for keeping it close and fighting back at the end, but you really just can't judge this Syracuse team by its cover. That's the front cover or the back cover, Nick.
Yeah, Jish, you hit on it. 6 goals in that third quarter. In that quarter specifically, Syracuse looked unguardable. But for me, I'm sticking with the attack. It's simply that Syracuse now has unlimited weapons in that repertoire to attack, right? Luke Roa ties a career high with 4 goals. Joey Spallina, not his best game statistically, only 1 goal and 1 assist. Leo didn't score for just the 2nd time this season. So now, with Billy Dwan now as well scoring for now the 3rd time out of the last 4 games, look out. Syracuse attack is attacking.
I love it, Nick. And listen, this has been a long trip for Syracuse, not only 6 consecutive road games, but they've been out west in Colorado for about a week. They started off on a good note with a win at Air Force on Thursday, but then tonight, a rematch with Denver from the quarterfinal matchup in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago, where the Pioneers came out on top. So how did this one play out at the home of the Pioneers? This was the 2nd most attended game at this venue in history. Not too shabby for a Monday night, and Chase Bruno got the home crowd fired up early on, putting Denver up 2-1. It was daylight at this point of the day when this got underway, a 6 o'clock local start, but Luke Roa, Nick mentioned it, getting in on the fun. That was his first of several goals, but Denver leading in the early going, and they kept on tacking them on, but Finn Thompson with the answer. Syracuse still trailing by a goal. Wyatt Hoddle gets in on the fun for the Orange.
And this is why I say you can't judge Syracuse by that 2-1 first quarter, because everybody started to eat that Finn Thompson goal. Really good, him going downhill, and Luke Roa can score from the mountaintops here in Denver, a 6-5 lead at halftime.
How about it? Cashing in on the man up, and the time was winding down in the first half. We fast forward a little more. It's now 9-5. Momentum on SU's side. Flags galore. Denver playing through it because it's a delayed penalty, and it's slotted home by Shane Rep to make it 9-6. But Luke Roa, oh, that's filthy. Fakes to the left, scores on the right side. This is a 5-goal game at this point for the man who scored 4 goals for Syracuse, giving them a cushion. But Chris Mirages, he made an impact for Denver in the 4th quarter.
This Denver team in the 4th quarter, like you said, Sam, they really just came out and blitzed Syracuse. It's simple as that. They won 5 of 6 faceoffs in the final frame. Just an incredible performance to really get back into the game.
But a milestone moment there. Joey Spallina, 2nd all-time in points. Denver, though, in the grand scheme of the game, kept on making it uncomfortable. Chris Mirages, again, 1-goal game, 5 seconds left, last gasp effort, a save, the ball's loose, the time expires, a little bit of a scuffle at the end as well. You wouldn't know these two teams are from the ACC and the Big East and are separated by several thousand miles. By the way, that was chippy to end things out. Syracuse gets a big-time win.
Well, geographically, you wouldn't really know Denver's in the Big East at all if you really look at a map. But either way, like you said, it felt like one of those old Big East rivals. It feels like that's kind of the MO of this Syracuse team. Whenever it wins close games or loses close games, it feels like it just gets chippy and a little bit. Honestly, I'm not that big of a fan. I think that you've got to keep a cool head. This is a game you should have won by a lot more. It was a 13-12 game. Sure, you had your good performers, but you can't be beating up on the little brother after they almost took your lunch. You have to win by more if you want to really flex in their face.
Yeah, but Jish, this is a Denver squad that 2 years ago did in fact take Syracuse's lunch in the NCAA quarterfinals back in 2024. And in that game, Cody Malowski had 2 goals. He's the only player on this Denver team from on this year's squad that scored in that game, and he had 3 goals. By far and away the best player for Denver all night long.
And let's remember that stacked now senior class for Syracuse. They were all sophomores at that time, and that was really their first experience of heartbreak, so that's got to feel good for them getting the job done on the road. Now, someone who was just a freshman at that moment in time, John Mullen, and he really stepped up his game today when it came to the face-offs, and that was a key to getting Syracuse some extra possessions down the stretch.
And he was great in that first Denver game as well when he was just a freshman. That entire playoff run was really when we found out the full John Mullen experience. This felt like a full circle moment for him. He went 16 for 27 at the dot today. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about his shortcomings all season long, especially when Syracuse was losing games. But now that they're winning, you kind of see the shades of the old John Mullen coming back. Timing it up before the whistle, not jumping off sides, not getting those dumb false start penalties that have lost him so many. He's finally timing it up again, and he's using his physical gifts to win it. It was really a breath of fresh air to see what he could do in the first half. But Nick, in that second half, especially the fourth quarter, he started losing more and more, and I got a little nervous at the end, I gotta say.
I mean, Jish, after the Air Force game, that's one of the things that head coach Gary Gait harped on in that press conference. He said sometimes Mullen just gets a little bit antsy at the dot, and it really showed in that game, but not really today. Only 2 faceoffs, but prior to that fourth quarter where Denver won 5 of 6, Mullen had won 15 of 21. So like you said, that's the Johnny Mullen that Syracuse fans know and love.
Yeah, successful trip out west for Mullen, who really got back in track between that Air Force and Denver game. But I'll tell you what, Mullen was winning a lot of those draws, creating those extra chances for Syracuse, particularly to start each half. The Orange were generating chance after chance, but it was Grayson Manning in goal who really impressed and gave Denver a chance in this one, Nick.
Yeah, Manning is unbelievable, Sam. He is coming into today. He was second in goals allowed per game and total goals allowed this season. Yep. He is unbelievable. He stood on his head numerous times. He had 9 saves in the first half. That could arguably be the reason why Syracuse even only led by 1 at halftime. He really stood on his head, kept Denver in the game, and even in the second half, made some big saves in the second half to allow Denver to come back.
Really the big difference between that first and second half, why Syracuse was getting more success, is they were getting closer shots in him. You got to credit the Denver defense for creating this shell around him, forcing those tough long shots. I mean, the only reason Luke Roa had 3-4 highlight goals today was because he kept getting forced out and Grayson Manning could put a stick on them. But because Syracuse just kept getting closer and closer, that's how they won in that run in the third quarter. But then again in the fourth quarter, when Syracuse was 2 men up at one point, Grayson Manning looked like the best Manning to ever play in Denver. Was cool, calm, and collected, and did not let the moment get too big for him.
Yeah, I mean, Jish, but that's what Denver is known for. They're known for their off-ball defense. They're known for the fact that they don't allow easy passes. And then Spallina's stat line shows it. He had 8 assists against Air Force. Today, only 1 apple versus the Pioneers. So that's what Denver does. They don't allow you to move the ball well, and it clearly showed because they could not penetrate that Denver defense.
Absolutely not.
So lots of praise for Denver's defense, and more specifically Manning between the pipes, understandably so. I would say it's a bold take from you, Jish, but the way he's playing today, fair enough. But with that being said, at the other end of the field, SU's defense put in a pretty good shift. There were portions of this game where Denver just struggled to get shots on goal, and that's because players were putting their bodies on the line, Jish.
And when you think of the defense, you think of those big Billy Dwans and Riley Figueres. Today, some of the best defense came from the midfield and attack. Yeah. That 10-man ride was absolutely lethal today. There was 3 goals in the first half alone in that second quarter where Syracuse forced a turnover in the attacking third and scored, just catching Denver on its back heel. They caught Manning really out of the net because he was focused on the clear, and Syracuse was just not allowing that. 8 caused turnovers. I mean, that really was the key to that game.
When you looked at the Syracuse defense as a whole, Jish, we were saying it kind of midway through the third quarter and even the start of the fourth, when they had to play 6-on-6 lacrosse on the one side of the field, they really had all the answers on that side. That Denver attack really couldn't generate much. Like you said, it was hard for them to generate shots on goal, and it was just simply because Syracuse had Denver's number for most of the game. Now lacrosse, it's a major game of runs, so once Denver started to win some face-offs, get in transition a little bit, create man-on-man opportunities, 3-on-2 as well. So once they kind of created those scoring chances, that's when they started to roll.
And those 10 saves too. I mean, Jimmy McCool, we've talked about him all season long. One of the best goalies in the nation. Had himself some clutch saves, especially at the end, the final play there. If he was even an inch out of position there, that would have been a tie ball game. We go to overtime. Orange press pass doesn't go out on time. It's the whole defensive experience. It trickles down all the way here to our CitrusTV.
Right, this would be a whole different conversation, right? If Syracuse collapses down the stretch, McCool doesn't make that big time stop, and we could have had bonus lacrosse out in Denver. The Pioneers almost completed the comeback, not quite. 13-12, the Orange win their 4th in a row. Up against our first break here on Orange Press Pass, but don't go anywhere because after the break, we're going to talk to our reporter Cole Purvis, who's out in Colorado to get his insight after a thrilling finish in the mountains. With that, we welcome you back to our CitrusTV studio as Orange Press Pass rolls right along following a 13-12 victory for Syracuse over Denver. I'm Sam Reis, joined by Jish Sokolsky and Nick Zuppe. Now, college basketball guru John Rothstein would state that tonight was the standalone game in the world of college lacrosse between Syracuse and Denver, but there was a loaded slate over the weekend, particularly on Saturday. As we take a trip quickly around the NCAA, anything that stands off the page for you guys?
I'm seeing some common Syracuse opponents. Johns Hopkins gets another win. Harvard gets another win. That loss looks a little bit better and better, I should say, by the day that Syracuse had, and that Johns Hopkins win also looking better with every win.
Jish, I'm looking at Boston University's win over Army. That was a BU squad that Syracuse kind of caught early on in the season at home. Really their first test of the season. And to go and beat Army like that, that's a really good win for the Terriers.
And Army slipping too. They just lost last week to Lafayette and now to Boston University. That 14 ranking might go down, down, down.
And that really is the world of lacrosse, especially this season, where every week it seems like the rankings are fluctuating. Goes to show you just the balance really across all of the country in terms of the NCAA landscape at the Division I level. Over specifically in SU's conference, the ACC, there were also some close ones. That Virginia-Maryland game went to not one, not two, 3 overtimes.
I mean, I'm rubbing my eyes at this Duke score, though. 21-5. You kidding me?
Right.
Duke dropped 21 goals. If I'm Syracuse, I'm shivering looking at that.
Yeah, but Jish, it was against Providence. Call a spade a spade. It's Providence.
Providence isn't bad.
Yes, but they're not exactly that good. It's like saying, like, you know, Siena has a shot theoretically against Duke.
Yeah, you know, in theory, they are next on Duke's schedule.
Yes, in theory, yes. But for me, I'm looking more just as a whole. I feel like there's really no really outstanding team so far in college lacrosse, and those two scoreboards show it.
I think we can all agree the Friars better on the ice than on the lacrosse field, but still a notable result like Jish mentions. And as we shift the focus back to tonight's game between Syracuse and Denver in non-conference action before that ACC slate gets underway, we welcome in our reporter for tonight's game. He's been out in Colorado for nearly a week now, Cole Purvis, and he's looking good as ever. Cole, great to see you. And my first question here, after a down-to-the-wire game where Denver had a chance to tie it and send it to overtime, we saw McCool make the stop, and then a scuffle ensue. Was that something that you kind of saw developing, or did it surprise you a little bit?
It was something I could see coming, Sam, because the refs were very heavily involved in this game, and the tensions were very high, and it's clear that these two teams do not like each other. After the games, the Syracuse players were walking through the tunnel very passionately, screaming and yelling and hyping each other up and expressing their dismay for this Denver team, the squad that eliminated them from the postseason 2 years ago. So neither of these teams like each other, and it was a highly emotional win because SU almost choked a big lead, up by 5 goals going into the fourth quarter. Nearly let that go, but was able to hold on with an incredible final defensive possession. So the tensions were definitely high, and I could definitely see that coming from a mile away.
Cole, a player that really seemed like he hated Denver because he saved his best performance for him. Peyton Anderson had the game's first goal, had one in the third quarter as well. What was really working for him? I know you talked to Gary Gait after the game as well. Did he have anything to say about Peyton Anderson's performance?
Well, Coach Gait said after the game, it's just simply the opportunities that have been given to him. And Anderson has been one of those players who's been switching positions all throughout the season. Sometimes he's playing attack, sometimes he's a midi. Today he was in the midfield, and Michael Leo got the start at the attack. And Coach Gait says it's really just a matchup-dependent thing, and he thought that against this Denver team, Anderson would be better in the midfield, and that he was. 4 points today, had 2 against Air Force the other day, and it's such a luxury that this SU offense has to have so many dynamic scorers. It wasn't really a Joey Spallina game today. It wasn't a Michael Leo game either. It was more of a Peyton Anderson and Luke Roa game. And so they really have an embarrassment of riches that when it's not one guy's day, they have other scorers that they can go to. And Anderson is one of those guys, a big, strong, physically intimidating player who's really hard to stop when he has the ball in his stick, and he showed what he had tonight for sure.
Cole, for me, by far and away, one of the biggest things about this game was a lot of rivalries and intensity displayed on the field today. You're talking about conference bragging rights between the Big East and the ACC. You're talking about revenge back in 2024. So at Peter Barton Lacrosse Stadium today, there were about 3,700 fans, which we came to find out is just the second most in program history. What was the overall atmosphere like at the stadium tonight?
It was incredible. There were people up on the hill. It was standing room only in this venue. Lots of people up behind the bleachers, leaning on the railings as well. Not an empty seat in the house. And I'll tell you what, it was a little bit hard for me to see in the first half with the amount of people that were flooded around me. But they have signs here on the sideline that say the lacrosse capital of the West, and they proved it tonight. There is a great fan base for lacrosse out here in Denver, and I know that this is a sport that's usually dominated by the East Coast, states like New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania, but I'll tell you what, Colorado has a great fan base for lacrosse. They proved it tonight. There wasn't an empty seat in the bleachers, and they came out and got treated to an excellent game as SU wins by just 1 goal. But the home team, the Denver Pios, gave them all they could handle with a near stellar comeback late in the game.
Cole, thank you so much for taking the time and your coverage really the last week out in Colorado, and safe travels back to the 315, all right? All right, we thank Cole for his coverage both at Air Force and at Denver. 2 big-time wins for the Orange. 4 in a row now for Syracuse, and it's time for me to hand out my Player of the Game award. Cole just mentioned it was more of a Peyton Anderson, Luke Roa type of game. I'm focusing on Luke Roa, though. The guy balled out. 4 goals, 11 shots from the get-go. He was really testing Grayson Manning, who we talked about, and more times than not, he was succeeding as well. And what I loved about Luke Roa is a lot of these shots from distance, right? He's a midfielder, but he showed that he can score in a variety of ways, from straight on, from the left alley, and these are long-range efforts as well. He's also a guy that can on one night be a playmaker, another day be the type of guy that finds the back of the net with consistency. He only had a goal and then 2 assists at Air Force, but more of the type of guy that said, I can do it myself tonight. Luke Roa, you are my player of the game. Orange Press Pass rolls on in a moment, reacting to this 13-12 win for Syracuse over Denver. We're going to play a fun game of Take Your Pick. You won't want to miss it. Stick around.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back on Orange Press Pass, a rare Monday night game and one that Syracuse takes care of business out west in. 13-12, the final over Denver with Jish Sokolsky and Nick Zuppe. I'm Sam Reis, and as we roll right along, it's time to take your pick. All right, here is the gist. Take your pick. I'm going to throw 2 questions at you guys, and you are simply going to take your pick on it based on the road trip that Syracuse just had of 6 games. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Cool. All right, we'll start with you first, Jish, on this first question. The hardest game of this 6-game road trip was?
We just watched it. It was this Denver game. Yes, it was. Going into playing the #1 scoring defense in a place that is a mile high up in the air against a sellout crowd, the second highest selling crowd in program history, and you have to sustain a 5-1 scoring run in the 4th quarter. What could possibly have been harder than that against the #14 team in the land that's hungry after only scoring 4 goals against Ohio State? Yeah, Syracuse had its hands full today. It's because Denver, and it's also, you have to take into account the emotional factor of it, the revenge on the mind. Syracuse only scored 8 goals the last time I played this team. You have to kind of go through all these obstacles, and this is the end of your 6-game road trip. So you're already tired from being away from the Dome that long. You're fatigued. You want to go home. You've just spent a week out in Colorado. This was the hardest game.
Jish, you said 2 things that are now going to drive my argument for the fact that it was the Penn game. At the time, UPenn was number 19, and you said it had to deal with a 5-goal run. Well, in that game, Syracuse had to go on a 5-goal run. They were down 8-4 late in the second half. And at that point, you're playing Penn on a Sunday after playing Princeton on a Friday. It's the quickest turnaround of the season for Syracuse. And you even just mentioned that the fact it was the 6th game of 6 out of this road trip. First time since 1972 that Syracuse played 6 straight games on the road. So you would think they're a little more excited. They got a little more pep in their step to finally be done with the road and get back to that home cooking in the Dome.
All right, I see both of your arguments. We're not awarding victors here, but I might have to side a little bit with Jish there, to be honest with you. But it was a gauntlet that Syracuse faced before returning home next weekend. Now, next question here on Take Your Pick. Compared to before the 6-game road trip and now after, in your opinion, is this team more national championship bound? I'll start with you, Nick.
Absolutely, simply because they're battle tested. What are you looking at me like that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
He's saying it with
No
confidence.
questions or comments or even concerns.
I'll hold my thoughts. Go ahead.
5-2 versus ranked teams now so far this season. They've proven that they can win on the road. Remember that whole stat. Syracuse hasn't won a game in February outside or whatever that nonsense was, because there's really only 4 games over the last 20 years. So they proved that to be incorrect. They can win outside, they can beat good teams outside and on the road, but they can even beat really good teams in Maryland like they did early on in the season. But also something that I want to touch upon, this Syracuse team really as a whole has just emerged as a real threat because of how many options they have on the attack.
Yeah, let's do some simple math here though. What were they ranked before the road trip? Number 1. What are they ranked right now? Number 8.
A bit lower.
You kidding me? Right, if the season ended after that Maryland game, Syracuse would have the number 1 seed in the NCAA, home field advantage against the weakest team that makes the NCAA tournament, and an easy path to the Natty. Right now, they're the number 8 team in the country. They have to play the best non-ranked team in the NCAA tournament. They've shown that they can lose games, that they cannot go wire to wire. It seems like every game they've played so far has been unconvincing. Even the Air Force game, they started out slow. The Johns Hopkins game, they started out slow. The Harvard game, they started out slow. They weren't doing that against your St. Joe's of the world, against your Boston Universities of the world. They looked much more like a national title contender before this road trip than they do after. They've shown a lot of worrying signs in these last 6 games.
Yes, but 2 schools you just mentioned, St. Joe's and BU, they're not Princeton, Penn, Johns Hopkins.
All right, great debate over there from Jish and Nick, but now it's time for the moment of the game today. And my player of the game was Luke Roa, so my moment of the game, it's got to be one of his 4 goals. A lot to choose from, right? And what a performance it was from Roa, but this goal in particular was just brilliant. And you felt like this was potentially the dagger at that stage. It didn't turn out to be, as Denver rallied for a comeback, fell just short. But the fake on one side and then the spin around move, bury it on the other. It's brilliant from Luke Roa. That right there is your moment of the game. All right, Orange Press Pass is up against its final break, but after this, we wrap up shop. Jish and Nick will sound off. You won't want to miss it. Final few minutes of Orange Press Pass. We're finally sitting down, taking a bit of a breather alongside Jish Sokolsky and Nick Zuppe. I'm Sam Reis. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday night. And let's get to this upcoming schedule for Syracuse. Following a 13-12 win over Denver, they're finally coming home, but some big tests coming up, guys.
I'm really looking at that Georgetown game. It's 11-27, and Georgetown still what? They still stink.
Sucks.
This is going to be okay, sure. Yeah. It's going to be a real bellwether game for Syracuse to see if they're really a national title contender, like Nick Zuppe says.
Yeah, Jish. I'm looking at Duke. They're the #1 offense in the ACC in terms of total goals scored, goals per game. Ben Johnson leads the entire ACC with 26 goals, and Cuse lost to them 11-7 last year.
All right, that's what's upcoming for Syracuse. But right now, it's time for the guys to sound off.
They say it's not about how you start, but how you finish. But what happens when your finish also leaves a lot to be desired? I said earlier in the show that Syracuse is a middle quarters team, but if it really wants to be taken seriously, it has to go coast to coast against Denver. That fourth quarter was riddled with unforced turnovers, squandered power plays, and a fight at the end after a game you won. Really, guys? Just like some of their other nail-biters this season, Syracuse was supposed to cruise to the finish line at the end. Instead, they showed a lack of discipline and focus to close out a game they could have won in the third quarter. They should be silent on that plane ride back to Syracuse. It might be good for the psyche, but it's bad for the team.
Well, Jish, you just hit on the fact that Syracuse had a subpar game at some points, but a guy who didn't necessarily shine was Syracuse attackman Joey Spallina. Now, the senior moved into second place on the all-time points list at SU, and when you are witnessing something special, it's important you stop and appreciate greatness. So with Spallina, his legacy often goes underappreciated due to the fact that he hasn't won a national championship or even a Tewaaraton to this point. So, Cuse fans and media members don't even recognize how great he has been simply because he hasn't really won anything yet, but his accomplishments stem far further than just what he hasn't won. He brought Syracuse back to the forefront of men's college lacrosse, and now that he is number 2 in points at a school with the most Tewaratons, you have to respect him.
All right, yeah, I still can't get over Jish's sound off there, but that does it for Orange Press Pass. For Jish Sokolsky, Nick Zuppe, I'm Sam Reis. Have a great night.